Inside Spurs is brought to you by our partners talkSPORT Bet. Head over to the website now to sign up for your exclusive new offer where you get £40 in free bets when you bet £10. Head over to talksportbet.com/Inside Spurs now. It was a fantastic result for Spurs. The early kickoff on Saturday at the Etihad. The WINIHAD, as we should call it now, Spurs fans.
The way that Thomas Frank set up his team was just perfection to me.
I think we should also praise Johnson's mentality because he's always trying to learn, and then also having a new coaching staff come in, bringing their own different ideas, is clearly helping him as well.
It's another clean sheet. That's
Who would have thought, yeah.
2 in the Premier League, 2 in 2, and we only had 6 last season, so we're a third of the way there.
To me, Morgan Gibbs-White is the bigger miss than ever Richie Eze.
I'm a huge fan of Van der Ven and Romero, but the fact is their availability record is bad. All it takes is for Van der Ven or Romero to be out injured for a month, 2 months, and the wheels will start falling off again. Obviously missed out on a couple of high-profile targets, as you said. So
Morgan Gibbs-White, we're incredible.
If you really want to be considered legends and go down in the history of this club, you've got an opportunity to do something that not many others have.
Yeah.
Keep winning. Don't just make it a one-off piece of silverware. Make sure that you add to that. I'm here to take you guys to the next level.
I feel like I've got Thomas Frank with me. I'm fine. Hello and welcome to Inside Spurs, sponsored by talkSPORT Bet. talkSPORT's dedicated Spurs show, where of course we talk all things Tottenham Hotspur. My name is Majestic, and joining me on the show today is Sonny Snelling from Sonny Talks Spurs and the Athletic Spurs correspondent, Jay Harris. How are we, gentlemen?
Really good weekend. I mean, what a start to the Premier League season for Spurs. I'm on cloud 9 at the moment.
Jay, happy the Premier League's back. It's gone off to a flying start.
Yeah, happy it's back, and this was actually a rare bank holiday weekend where I didn't go out and party, so I actually feel very energised right now.
You've had your overnight oats, you're ready for a good show.
Exactly.
And of course, to give some context before we get into the show, Jay used to be Brentford's correspondent at The Athletic, so you know a lot about our new gaffer, Thomas Frank.
Yeah, covered him at Brentford for 3 years, then started covering Spurs last year, so he's basically followed me. And I even had the pleasure of going out to Copenhagen earlier this summer and visiting his hometown and some of the clubs he worked at in Denmark. So that definitely helped me get a better understanding of him, that little extra bit.
Absolutely. So much to get through during the show today, including the Eze saga we'll get into later on. But what softened the blow, of course, was a fantastic result for Spurs. The early kickoff on Saturday at the Etihad. The WINIHAD, as we should call it now, Spurs fans. 2 goals beating Man City, not conceding. Sonny, how did we do it?
To me, this is the best victory we've had against Manchester City, because in years gone past, whether it was Mourinho or Conte or even Postecoglou, there was always a bit of luck involved to me. There was always like a smash and grab element. But the way that Thomas Frank set up his team was just perfection to me. Like the way, I think a lot of people, and I spoke to Dan Kilpatrick before the game for talkSPORT, and he sort of said the same as me, that we sort of thought we'd go with a 3 at the back, sort of how we set up against PSG. But Frank went quite plucky. He went for a man-to-man system and a 4 at the back, and it really paid off. The midfield of Sarr, Palhinha and Bentancur looks phenomenal. They're just really winning their duels. I think there's some graphics doing the rounds on Twitter over the weekend of how many duels and tackles they were winning. The way, and I think Match of the Day did a really good in-depth analysis of how Van der Ven and Romero were literally pressing Haaland and Cherki in their final third, giving them no respite whatsoever. And then we had like Porro and Jed Spence on the halfway line. So the way that Frank sort of set this up was phenomenal, and it really paid off because our press was, dynamic. It was electric. And this is, we're used to thinking Ange Postecoglou was, really good at pressing, but it seems like we've gone from that erratic pressing to just really clever. But my only worry is, can a team do this for like a whole season? Probably not, and that's where some transfers are going to need to come in.
Absolutely. It's the third different approach we've seen from Thomas Frank, Jay. As someone that's covered him before and know him well and his systems well, this isn't surprising to you, is it?
Not at all. It's one of his biggest strengths, no doubt about it, and I thought it's why it made perfect sense for Spurs to go after him. And we've already seen the 3-5-2, which he loved in his first couple of years at Brentford. Obviously 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. And I think one of Frank's biggest strengths is he knows when to use particular players in particular systems. So take Brennan Johnson. It was a little bit of a shock that he didn't start, and I don't think he came on at all against PSG. And then he scored in the last 2 games and had a massive impact. So sometimes it's about being brave enough to say, okay, I'm sorry to take you out of the team this week, but this is not going to get the best out of you, and we need to look and think longer term. Now, before the game against Man City, Frank said that for every game he identifies 3 key themes, and that for the City game, he said this after the fact, it was defensive principles, being brave, and set pieces. Now, being brave, you can look at that in different ways. Sometimes it's being brave on the ball. Sometimes it's being brave man-to-man pressing high up the pitch. And when it works, Romero follows Haaland, gets that free kick, and it just sets the tone early on. So I thought it was a really, really impressive performance.
Absolutely. And the thing is as well, this isn't Thomas Frank's first time of beating Pep Guardiola. It seems like he's got his number. What's the benefits of having a flexible coach? That was probably one of the biggest criticisms of Ange Postecoglou. But going into these games, I think last season, Sonny, you know this as a fan as well, sometimes it almost felt like we were setting ourselves up to fail. When we see Thomas Frank set his teams up and, you know, the way that he employed that system of Sarr, Bentancur and Palhinha against, you know, such a good midfield. It was a midfield masterclass, and and it has to be props to the coach.
We've got to remember the week before, Tijani Reinders had, you know, one of the best Premier League debuts we've seen from a midfielder against Wolves. And I just feel like, you know, I was singing this from the rooftops. I really loved Ange Postecoglou, appreciate what he did. But the fact that we had 22 losses in the Premier League last year and we were just doing the same thing, you know, you could sort of tell what a stereotypical Ange Postecoglou goal was. It was sort of get it to the byline, cross it across the box, and Brendan Johnson's there to tap it in. And there was just never that stage where we were playing against teams with a low block or teams who like to defend, or like a team like City who, you know, they're going to have more of the ball, like especially in their home ground. And we'd just turn up and we'd just get rolled over really, and it was embarrassing in stages. Whereas now with Frank, it's sort of, he understands what he's got at his disposal. He knows he's changing, not just in game, he's changing before game. He must, you know, he's got his iPads out. He knows ahead of Man City, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to work on. And the fact that, you know, football seems to always come full circle. You know, we're seeing man-to-man pressing again, and it's like, and, you know, proper, you know, midfield battles and, you know, tough tackling. And a couple of years ago, it was just ticky-tacky and keeping the ball. But it was sort of like he's willing to sacrifice that to just, you know, the way that, you know, the first goal was scored. And there was actually a really good feature on Monday Night Football where he's looked at John Stones in the first game. I don't know if you guys have seen this. And City and Pep keep wanting to play teams offside. So what he noticed was John Stones keeps stepping up and like moving like that. So Richarlison, when the ball comes to him, he knows to curve his run, and then he's in behind. John Stones slips over on his backside, and we're in, and Johnson taps in. So there's so many like clever things that he looks at. Even a final one that I saw was, I think we're the third most team to go to City and win the most press and duels in their final third. A team who did it before that, who were just above us, were Chelsea a couple of years ago. But what they were doing was they always had the option for Ederson to go along to Haaland. But because we were a little bit, you know, higher up the pitch, Haaland had to then track back, and he didn't have the option to do, you know, those famous curved Haaland runs. So it's like these minute details where he's done his homework. Apparently, I don't know if you can confirm this, Jay.
Yeah,
he watched every game last year of Spurs. I mean, I felt sorry that he had to go and sit and do that, Thomas Frank. But he's seen the things that he can work on. Yeah, we had to do it, so why not him?
Just quickly, I think Thomas Frank has learned his lesson because, yes, there was that one season where Brentford beat Man City twice, but there was also a game where Ederson hit the ball long, and because of the man-to-man pressing situation, Haaland was left with a one-on-one with Ethan Pinnock. Beats Pinnock and scores, and I think Man City won that game 1-0. So it's on that moment. When Frank obviously comes to Spurs, he's working with better quality players. He's got Van de Ven as the ultimate get-out-of-jail card. It just means you can probably take these risks and they can pull off them a little bit more. So I think that's also where he's learned his lesson from what's happened in the past.
And that word brave has been thrown around a bit. Even Thierry Henry dubbed Spurs as being brave, and you know, you've got to be brave in those moments at places like the Etihad, and it's choosing the moments of when you apply that really high press. Like you said, the fact that Romero and Van de Ven are pressing the strikers in their own half, it was brilliant to watch. And the thing is, Jay, you know, we've had the Mourinhos, we've had the Contes at Spurs, and we've played like almost a counter-attack system. With Frank, it doesn't feel like you're necessarily doing that because it was still an enjoyable game to watch for Spurs.
It wasn't boring, was it?
No.
Yeah, I think one of the good things about Thomas Frank is that in an ideal world, and he said this multiple times, he'd love to play 4-3-3. He loves Barcelona. He's got a really good relationship with Albert Capellas, who's a former La Masia Academy director, takes massive inspiration from Guardiola when he was younger. So in an ideal world, Frank wants to play attractive football. but he knows there's a time and a place for it. And there are going to be times when you're playing against Man City at the Etihad where you need to tell Vicario and Porro, just hit it long and get out of this box. But then there are times where you've got to tease Man City's players to pressing you hard at the pitch and playing around them. And that's sort of what we saw with that opening goal, where you draw Man City in, you play it around them, and then you hit it long and Richarlison's free.
Speaking of the goals from both Johnson and Palhinha. Palhinha with his full Premier League debut getting a goal. Let's talk about him quickly because, wow, what a signing that looks like. And not a player that I've seen at Spurs probably since maybe Wanyama's best season that he had for us when he was the ultimate warrior in the middle of the park. But there feels like with this guy, Palhinha, Frank's dubbed him as world class. Is he?
He was when he left Fulham for Bayern Munich, putting up the most tackles, most duels in the Premier League. And I've seen so many people deep dive into Palhinha at Bayern Munich and being like, but why didn't it work out there? It was the wrong move. I'm not sure why they signed him, because it's a Vincent Kompany team who, they want him pushing up the field, but we know that his best heat map, his best areas on the pitch are sort of just in front of the back four. But then sometimes he can push on if we need to. But he's now got a few more runners around him. Like Sarr is going to do his running. That is more, we've seen it from his heat maps as well. It's absolutely crazy what he's doing. And also, like, Palhinha's making Bentancur a better player, because we all had question marks over Bentancur, going into a final year of a contract. Is it time to say goodbye? Have we seen the best of him? But looking at Bentancur now and the way he's moving the ball around, because he is the better passer of those two. It's a really refreshing thing to see. But yeah, going back to Palhinha, I mean, some of the tackles, the one in the area where he just slides across, what you're getting. It's no nonsense. But, the fact that he's in the area to sort of smash that ball home, he's a very clever player. He's a bit old school. You said Wanyama, maybe a bit Højbjerg as well, the sort of no nonsense.
The one thing I'd say the difference between Højbjerg and Palhinha is, and I love Højbjerg, I used to call him the Daniac, right? I think in his armoury, in Pierre's head, he can play a ball and he can move it forward. I think Palhinha really understands his role and takes, the warrior.
Mercenary, isn't he?
Yeah, and that thing there. I think sometimes with Pierre he'd overplay, and that's what his criticisms were from other Spurs fans. Like he'd try and make that long pass, and
that's probably why he's. We could have kept him this summer, but we sent him.
Whereas
to
I think
Marseille.
Palhinha is happy to let Bentancur be the guy that has the pass in him. And he's happy to be the guy that's just going to stop everything.
It's his Norgard, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Do you know that Frank has coached Højbjerg probably from when he was like 15, 16? So I think if Frank had joined earlier this summer, it would have been interesting to see if he'd sort of asked him to stick around. Because, he was coaching him in Denmark's youth teams 15, 16 years ago.
And he knows what a warrior he is. But with Palhinha, I just think there's this level of, I don't know, that the timing of some of these tackles.
And some of that is experience. This guy's 30 years old. We know that Spurs over the last few years have mainly signed young players, but heading back into the Champions League, you need that quality, that experience, someone who can come in and do a job straight away. And obviously it's quite funny because Palhinha's first game against Bayern was a bit of a disaster. He gives that penalty. He gives that penalty away. But you can't judge a player on one game. It doesn't really matter why it didn't work out at Bayern, because it's on the evidence of 2 or 3 games at Spurs is working out excellently.
Absolutely. Brendan Johnson, again, ole. He has a knack of turning up in the box in the right place, but don't underestimate how difficult that finish was.
I mean, just class. I mean, even if Trafford does get a hand to it, it's that movement. It's so funny with Brendan Johnson because he still gets a lot of stick, and I still can't get my head around it because he's not like an old school winger who's good at dribbling or like this new, like a Salah where you think he's going to get tons and tons of goals, but in the right place at the right time. He's a bit like a striker. Like he knows like the runs that he needs to make to get into the area. He's just so potent in the box as well. And even, the week before against Burnley, that's a non-stereotypical Brendan Johnson goal. They're sort of running onto a pass, across goal sort of finish. So I just think, what Thomas Frank's known for, and you probably can back me up here, Jay, he's known for improving attackers. Look at the different sort of attackers he's had. Tony's, Watkins, Benrahma's, Mbeumo, Visser. They're all a bit different. And I feel like Brendan Johnson is, again, another different forward. But what Thomas Frank will do is go, I know you're good at finishing. I know you're good at arriving late in the box. So what he'll do is if we are setting up probably with like a 3-man front forward line, Kudus does the dribbling maybe on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, and then he's crashing into the box to finish and just sort of playing that like middle third on the right-hand or left-hand side. I feel like that is that's how you improve players. You go, I know you're good at this. we're going to work on this and not try and, because I don't think we're going to be seeing him as a mazy, dribbler who's going to always go for his fullback. I think he's a bit of a destroyer on the wing, which is a weird term to sort of say, but he's just so good at crashing in and making himself known in the box when it comes to goals.
What's intriguing to me is that he's playing on the left and scoring, whereas for the majority of the last couple of seasons, he's playing on the right. I had the opportunity to speak to Johnson in pre-season when I went on the tour to Hong Kong and South Korea, and he really praised Justin Cochrane, and lots of people do.
Yep.
But what Johnson said was that Justin's training sessions and the different drills they do are really, really similar to what happens in matches, and it's all about different finishes. And it sounded like Cochrane was also encouraging Johnson to look at Kudus, look at Tel, look at Audebert, look at how these guys approach and finish a ball. What can you learn from them and take into your game? Johnson also said he's working on his left foot a lot, and it's something that Son had encouraged him to do a lot. So I think we should also praise Johnson's mentality, because he's always trying to learn, and then also having a new coaching staff come in, bringing their own different ideas, is clearly helping him as well.
Well, I think people forget how young Johnson is. He was brought in with a big price tag, so people expect a lot. And as you say, I think there's this thing sometimes with all of us Spurs fans, we expect everyone to be on a wing doing a little dribble and cutting inside and doing something, because we have been spoilt over the years with the likes of a Bale, a Sonny, even back to David Gilliner. We expect people to be able to do that with their feet. And as you said, maybe Johnson's just of a bit of a different mould. It's interesting you mentioned Justin Cochrane there. Of course, I've waxed lyrical about Justin, and the fact that he's part of Thomas Tuchel's England setup as well, and where he's come from. You notice Brian Mbeumo, when he's moved to Manchester United, he's talked about Justin and the development there. The ability to have these other coaches that Frank sets up, and I'd like to hear more from you, Jay, on this, is he chooses his team so specifically, doesn't he? And they've all got their own roles. We've even seen the fact that I never knew that Danso had a throw like that on him. Has he had a throwing competition before? What is it with Frank and his team? Does he give everyone individual roles or something? Like, for example, Justin must be like part of the forwards line.
Yeah, that's always been the case. He sort of splits the coaching department into different areas. So I think Matt Wells is still in charge of the defence. He was under Postecoglou. Justin Cochrane and Thomas Frank always looked after the attackers at Brentford, and it's the same here. And then you've got people like Andreas Gordson, who's a set-piece coach, Cameron Campbell, who's the individual development coach, which they call IDP. Hopefully, I'm trying to think if I've missed anyone. Fabian Otter, the new goalkeeping coach. And then I actually should probably double check with Thomas Frank if he does this, but at Brentford, he'd then give different coaches 4 or 5 players that they were responsible for. Okay. And it's sort of to foster better relationships with them. So sometimes, normally, the attacking coaches would look after the attacking players, and then they'd sort of help them with movement, but also ask them, what's going on in your personal life, what's going on, etc. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the importance of that, making sure that everyone's together. And one thing, and I asked Thomas Frank this in an interview, during his time at Brentford, some of the coaches, Chris Haslam, who's come with him, would organise team bonding exercises, axe throwing, archery, go-karting, stuff which some people might turn their noses up, but I think it's quite important for team building. Thomas Frank said, unfortunately, because the scheduling tour was so crammed, they didn't get the opportunity to do that. But that gives you another insight. He wants the players, the staff, to hang out with each other in their spare time, get to know each other better, because then when you're in difficult moments over the course of a season, you lose a few games in a row, you get knocked out of a competition, the fact that you're all tight-knit should help massively in you overcoming those challenges.
Absolutely. And just to round off the Man City performance, another clean sheet. That's
2 in 4, yeah.
2 in the Premier League, 2 in 2. And we only had 6 last season, so we're a third of the way there.
How?
Well, I just think when I've spoken to other people, and I know it's just, when we have a bit of banter with other fans and where they expect Tottenham to finish this year, etc., we were never, ever going to repeat last season. That was just not going to happen. But to go to the Etihad and get a clean sheet, that's no easy feat, Jay.
Not at all. And like we said earlier, the fact that it's a different defensive approach as well deserves a lot of credit. We knew that, as you mentioned, last season was an absolute anomaly. Having Van der Ven and Romero together makes a massive difference. Huge. I think Jed Spence, he signed that new long-term contract. That probably gives him a little bit of confidence boost.
More cigars out for Jed.
And he seems to be, I've seen a few of his posts on social media, sort of relishing this 1v1.
He's growing.
Yeah,
he's growing.
It's quite funny. I asked him after the Super Cup against PSG, I said, I know you're a teammate of Desiree Doué at Rennes, but you just come up against Kvaratskhelia, Dembele, Doué, etc. Must give you more confidence for the season. He said, I'm a confident guy anyways.
Well, we're sunglasses indoors with you, so.
But clearly the way this defence is being drilled, their different tactical approaches, etc., is just working perfectly, and they're just a little bit more solid. There was a decent foundation under Postecoglou. They just did silly things sometimes, and on tour, one thing Ben Davies said was that the coaching staff had identified low-hanging fruit, really easy, simple things that the players and the coaches could do to make the team better. And I think even the defending from set pieces is a good example of that. They just look so much more solid. So it's tiny things which make a big difference over the course of a season.
I heard Brennan Johnson in a post interview say about the fact that Thomas Frank really respects defending. And Tim Sherwood kind of tried to take that as a bit of a side swipe to Postecoglou. I don't imagine that from Brennan Johnson at all. But the fact that Thomas Frank does respect defending, and even the forward players understand that, that's just a positive, and why we're in the place of 2 clean sheets.
Yeah, I just feel, I mean, Jay said it there, like, it was just nothing silly at the weekend. The pass, and we sort of saw the opposite from Manchester City. Why is James Trafford playing that pass when he can see whoever it was, Sarr or Richarlison on his shoulder? Like, we had that so many times last season where it's just do the simple things, and sometimes football is as basic as that. It is just when in doubt, just go long. Like, and I like the fact that we are going long, or when we are playing Burnley, we are going to have more of the ball because it's Burnley and they're not the same calibre as Manchester City. So I like the way he's mixing up, and it is quite risky, changing a whole midfield to one game to the other, but you have just got to identify what's in front of you sometimes. And I even think Vicario looks a lot stronger in there. Like, he's really comfortable catching all the balls, and Romero stepping up as captain, which we'll probably touch on in the next section. But yeah, it's the thing is, watching this football, it's comfortable. I'm not sitting there like, even it got to about the 60th, 70th minute, and I'm like, we might not concede here. Like, we actually look really strong in front of
I was listening to the commentary on talkSPORT on Saturday, unfortunately, because I was in Ibiza, so I wasn't watching it. And at no point, even when you listen to the radio and it feels tense. It just felt like we was comfortable. I think after we settled after the first 20 minutes, I think the first 20 minutes, Man City looked dangerous. If they was going to score at any point, it would have been that point.
Because we've done that before as well. We went 2-0 up at the Etihad before when Emerson... So, like, we've got the hit, and, I know we did it against PSG, but even that PSG loss, I think the fact that we lost...
It was a draw.
But the fact that we drew it, I think Thomas Frank would have taken more from that 100%. Than if we had lifted it, because he went... he knew we were going too deep. He knew, we were doubling up really well on their wingers, but that one moment of switch off, he'll be, showing that video time and time again, being like, this can't happen. And it shows, you go to Manchester City, they're of a similar calibre to PSG, and... to not let Haaland score on Mamouche, their attack is
it's unbelievable,
fierce,
isn't it?
But it is impressive.
This is Inside Spurs, talkSPORT's dedicated Spurs show, all things Spurs, and of course we are sponsored by talkSPORT Bet. Let's talk about the state of the squad now, because of course we're going to have to talk about what happened last week in a moment, but Mr. Target, let's just say. Jason Cundy had a lot of fun on talkSPORT wearing his clown nose and clown
and the baby,
and I had to endure that live from Ibiza, unfortunately. The thing is, Jay, as much as we look more organised and the press looks great, and the squad though, is there enough in there for Champions League, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, and expecting hopefully to be pressing towards European places in the Premier League?
Yeah, this is my one concern at the moment. I don't want to be a downer on the first 2 wins in the Premier League, but at the moment, Thomas Frank and his coaching staff have a week to prepare for these games, to work on these detailed tactical plans where they're changing the midfield, they're changing the formation, the shape, the structure. By the time the Champions League kicks in, you've got 2-3 days max. And one of those days is probably a recovery day because you're getting back late from an away Champions League game. So I think that's going to be a real struggle and a real challenge, especially because Frank doesn't have any European experience. I think he reached the qualifying rounds of the Europa League with Bromby, but that's it. So something he needs to learn really quickly. So the squad is in a bit of a strange position because obviously missed out on a couple of high-profile targets, as you said. So
Morgan's white. We're talking about them.
Heading into this final week, or final 6 or so days now, what the recruitment department, so Daniel Levy, CEO Vinay Venkatesham, sporting director Johan Langer, and Thomas Frank, what they need to decide is: do we just need anybody in the building to avoid the injury crisis that Spurs suffered last season, or do they wait for quality, and do they wait until January, or probably more likely wait until the summer, because January is always difficult. Now, on the pre-season tour, Thomas Frank said that he doesn't want players for the sake of players. He wants quality. But sometimes you have to face the reality of the situation. So I think I lean more towards something needs to be done, but I'm not completely confident that something will get done.
Where's the areas that need to get done, Sonny?
I'd say, I mean, obviously a 10.
Yeah.
Like we needed a 10 if Maddison and Kulusevski were fit, because with Kulusevski he can play on the right, which I think Frank would exploit in certain games. With Maddison, he's versatile. He could play maybe in a double pivot as well. To me, Morgan Gibbs-White is the bigger miss than Eberechi Eze, because he wanted to come. It was practically done, medical confirmed. I know everyone says Eze, there was rumours he was going to come as well, but he was always going to pick Arsenal. It's just obvious he's a gooner. But I just feel like what Morgan Gibbs-White offers is that 10, the perfect 10 for a Thomas Frank system of someone who was going to track back, who was going to defend, who was going to...
Great energy.
Yeah, really good dribbler, goals, assists, perfect player in that regard. So what you're trying to do now is you are going down to the next level to try and find a player to tick those boxes. And at the moment, unless you're going and slapping down 100 million or 80 to 100 million on Morgan Rogers, it's not happening, because you're looking at Nico Paz, who's being linked from Como. But again, Real Madrid got first dibs, and you're looking at 70 million euros. You've got Bilal El Khanous from Leicester, Palace looking like they can get him. But again, is he of the quality? Can he come in straight away and
improve the side?
Yeah, because at the moment, like, this midfield is looking quite formidable as a strong three. And Sarr, has got 3 goals in pre-season. He's been, man of the match as well, and he's been really impressive. But it's really a confusing situation, and we've got like a nice amount of attacking talent. I hear people say left winger. We did a left winger, but if Johnson can play out on the left, Kudus on the right, you've still got Tel and Odebear. I thought Odebear came on at the weekend and looked really good.
Decent cameo,
To me, I'd rather put all our eggs in one basket of that 10 than trying to get a winger that we don't know like who that is either. Like Savinho, to me, I'm like, it's a risk. If you're going to make him our record signing, it's a risk, because he's got the potential. But again, 1 goal last year, I think 8 or 9 assists. To me, it's like, is that a player who's going to come in and set the league alight at Spurs? I'm not so sure. And again, a lot of people are saying left back, full back. I don't think we need a full back. I feel like we are fine in that regard.
Between Dougie and Jed Spence, because Jed Spence is so versatile.
And like Archie Gray can play it right back as well. He did it for Leeds, in the last season before they got before he left. And then like centre back, this is the one. And Jay, I wish you could shed some light on this. Why do Tottenham need a centre back? Because to me, you've got Kevin Danzo, who I think is fantastic. You're hopeful that Romero and Van der Ven can stay fit. But then, to me, there's rumours that Luka Vuskovic is going to get loaned out to Hamburg. Why not just keep him? Because he's got the, he's got the build. He's got the, he looks really good. He was good against Reading in pre-season. Is it just Spurs are worried? I mean, Kota Takai as well was coming. Are Spurs just worried of that centre-back issue coming up again from last year?
I think, firstly, with Vuskovic, he is still only 18 years old. So,
physical guy though, isn't he?
Of course he is, but what is best for him, and he's probably in a very similar situation to Mikey Moore, where if Spurs were in the Europa League this season, then he'd probably be playing regularly in the Europa League, but Spurs are in the Champions League. It's a different level of intensity, so it's probably more beneficial for him that he plays week in, week out and continues to grow and develop. Kota Takai, unfortunately, he's just been injured throughout pre-season, so he's just had no opportunity to train. He's obviously coming from the J-League, which is going to be a significant step up anyways. He's probably had very limited time to integrate with his teammates, etc. So maybe expecting him to be the 4th choice is a little bit too soon. So then you're left with Dragusin, who is obviously recovering from an ACL and probably wasn't a perfect fit for Spurs anyways. I think maybe I'm being harsh.
I'd say perfect fit for Andrew's system. He didn't suit Andrew's system.
I think he's better, yeah.
I think he'll be better under Frank. I'm still a little bit concerned about his quality on the ball. Then you've obviously got Danso, Van der Ven and Romero. I'm a huge fan of Van der Ven and Romero, but the fact is their availability record is bad. And Romero's availability record is bad over 3-4 seasons, not just last season.
Yeah.
So I think what Frank will be thinking is, if Romero and Van der Ven get injured, then essentially it's Danso. Dragusin, we don't know when he's coming back. Takai probably seems a little too raw. I just need someone else, especially if, as Frank has said, as Levy said, as Venkatesham has said, we want to win the Premier League and the Champions League in the near future. We want to compete in multiple competitions. Yeah. All it takes is for Van der Ven or Romero to be out injured for a month, 2 months, and the wheels will start falling off again. So I think it's a case of maybe last season we were too risky with the numbers we had.
Prevention rather than cure.
Exactly.
I just
Let's
think
just avoid
it's a
that.
hard sell though to me, because it's
Of
like
course.
you're going out into the market and going, we want you to come to us and play centre back. You're not going to be first choice because we've got these two who are quite good, but there is a chance you could come in.
Yeah.
It is, but where is that market? Because you've got and I don't know what the truth is with the links, but Hincapi from Bayer Leverkusen now looks like he's going to Arsenal, annoyingly again. But again, good player, versatile, can play on the left, but it's like, is he gonna? He's not for 60 million. Spurs, if they're paying 60 million for a player, that's a starter.
Yep.
And then where do you go then? Do you try and get a player I don't know? We've been linked with Nathan Collins from Brentford. Does he come in, or is he's a captain? I don't know where Spurs are shopping at the moment. It's a bit of a random
Weird
thing.
place, yeah.
Whereas for a 10, it's an easier sell because it's 60 million. You're going to start, and you're going to be really important for this team.
Correct.
So yeah,
And
it's
the
a
thing
weird
is,
one.
we're not likely to spend 60, 70 million on a sub.
No.
And that brings us on nicely to the players that we've been most impressed with since the start of the season and the Super Cup. And I think this is testament to actually a good bit of business, because 2 out of 3 of them, for me, is Palhinha and Kudus. And that's what Spurs have lacked over the last 10, 15 years, is people coming in as starters and, instantly making an impact. We haven't really done that in recent times, where we've had almost a settled squad. That was always the thing under Pochettino. It's like, oh, no one's going to improve that first 11. It's like, no, there is room to improve always. And even where we're at now, there's still room to improve, as we said, possibly the left-hand side of number 10. I think Kudus, for the money that we spent on him at 25,
It's like a snip.
it just looks unbelievable. Jay, we've seen the fact that he starts really well for West Ham, first season brilliant, and then almost looked like down tools last year. Hopefully unlikely to do that at Spurs. It'll be settled Champions League football.
Yeah, I'm not worried about what happened at West Ham last year, because obviously they'd sacked a manager by October, November. Obviously, Graham Potter's come in and not much has changed. So I think it was a turbulent period at the club in general. And of course, that's going to impact a player. Obviously, he's also does his best work on the right, cutting in on the left, a little bit similar to Jared Bowen. So there's always going to be a little bit difficult there. I've been so impressed by Kudus. He's one of my favourite players anyways. I've watched him quite a few times playing for Ghana, saw him at the World Cup, and it was like he was playing single-handedly for them at times. I think what amazes me is how, we all know he's skillful on the ball, but he's just got that wiry type of strength where if you were a big burly defender, you'd look at him and think, oh, I'm going to barge you off this ball so
weird,
easily.
isn't it? Yeah.
But you end up rebounding off
Like a
him.
striker, how he holds off.
He's so intelligent with the way he holds up the ball. Even the fact in that PSG game, he was playing up front with Richarlison. It was a very different role. Sometimes had to run off the shoulder. Sometimes had to drop deep. You can basically put Kudus anywhere in that front four, and he will do an excellent job for you. And Thomas Frank has always loved those players who are versatile and he can move them around. So I think Kudus is probably my favourite player in the team at the moment. I just think every time he gets the ball, does something sensational. There are times he pulls out tricks and flicks. We all know those players who do it at the wrong time. But I actually think a lot of the time Kudus does it for the right reason. Even against Burnley, the flick to get past the defender. I think he's a joy to watch.
The other notable one, of course, for me, 2 other ones. Start with the captain, because I think Cuti Romero, for me, is a world-class centre-back. And he's our captain. He's a World Cup winner. The fact that we managed to keep him, get him on a new deal, he looks happy at the club. The fact that we won, he's a winner. Wants to win things. And he loves the club. We won something. All the talk of Atletico, mate, Simeone, as I said before, could be his dad. They are just so made for one another, aren't they? In terms of the housery, right? And I thought, oh, no, we're going to lose him. So the fact that he's here, he stepped up. I think giving him the armband, I think people talk about the reckless challenges and the red cards. They're
It's not a thing anymore.
It's not a thing anymore. It hasn't been for a while. I think people are looking at the past a bit too much there. I think he takes that role of captain super seriously.
I feel like, and Spurs have got a really good history with Argentines, haven't they? Like Ricky Villa and Ozzy Ardile. So
Playing
it's
in the cup for
exactly.
Tottenham.
So it means a lot to him, and he's just a real underrated leader. I think he's won most of the finals. I think if not all if we don't count the Super Cup, he's won all the finals he's played.
Well,
in.
he was the player that Messi told Barcelona to sign.
Yeah.
So when you get co-signed by Messi, it's not a bad thing, is it?
But he's just underrated in different parts. I think we will talk about his strength and he's he's proper defensive attributes. But 2 things I think he's great of. He's so good on the ball, comfortable, as in picking passes. But also the way he can sort of punch a pass into the midfield that sort of gets the move going. I think he's totally underrated. He's quick, he's strong. You can see there was a moment at the weekend where he did go on one of those, like he was just chasing one player and he went all the way to level. So he has still got that, he wants to do that. But there was moments last year as well where it weren't so much the recklessness. It was like he was a bit confused at the back. He was like stepping up when he didn't need to. And it's like Frank's going to just tell him to just sort of sit and just defend and, control that line. What we've seen from like Van Dijk at Liverpool over the years, he's not up there, I'd say, at the moment with Saliba and Gabriel and Van Dijk, etc. But he's asking questions because he has got so much potential. And the fact he's so good in this partnership with Van de Ven just speaks volumes, because when they're together, we are so much better as a team, and they just really complement each other. We've been blessed to have Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, but these two, if they stay fit, they're rivaling them as a solid Spurs partnership.
I do think with Romero that he had a bad start to last season, but there's key context to that. I think he only had 2 weeks off after winning the Copa America with Argentina and was thrown straight into the starting 11, and I think he started the majority of the first 10 or so games in the league before he picked up that foot injury. And I remember writing at the time, I think after the Leicester City draw, where he lost Vardy for their goal, saying, I don't think he should really be playing this game. You've got Dragusin sat on the bench, who's been involved throughout pre-season. Give him the opportunity and let Romero sort of ease his way into the season. So I think there's key context for that. And then Romero is maybe not your traditional type of leader or captain where you're sort of seeing shouting at people and sort of pulling them into position. But the stories I hear about what he's like in the dressing room, just very professional, and around the Europa League final, sort of geeing everybody up and telling them, we've got to win this, we've got to make sure we smash them, etc.
Drinking a bottle of wine on the bus, with sunglasses on.
Yeah, they're sometimes the things we don't see and we're not privy to. But I think it's massive for him that he stayed. And it's also massive for Thomas Frank, because to lose Son and Romero, or to have doubts about Romero's future hanging over the season, would have been really tricky for him to navigate.
Absolutely. The other player I think needs a notable mention is Sarr.
Easy, yeah.
It almost feels like, because of course it looks like we're trying to offload Bissouma. It looks like Thomas Frank doesn't fancy him. You can't turn up late for the new gaffer. That's just 10 weeks' wages.
Silly,
This is silly.
It's a rookie error.
First impressions count. So for me, it almost feels like, Thomas Frank's put his arm around Sarr and goes, listen, you're going to be my main man. Forget the Bissouma Sarr talk. You're the guy. Give him the confidence. Like you said, pre-season, even that audacious chip against Arsenal and all that kind of stuff. He's always had little moments at Spurs where you go, there's a player in there. But we haven't seen it consistently.
Yeah.
I know it's only 2 games in, but that's a consistent 1, 2, could be 3 more. You know what I mean? And then we're
That's
there.
how it starts.
But the energy that guy has, the running.
I think he's just gone under the radar, because I feel like when we went into this season, there was all like Bergvall, Archie Gray, Frank wanted Archie Gray at Brentford. People weren't talking about Sarr. And the fact is, first season at Spurs, really good. He came into that Manchester United home game and that scored, looked really energetic. Last year, it was a weird one, because it was just sort of, because our midfield was so erratic and, it just didn't really fit him, because we had like a lone 6 and 2 8s. It was like, where should we play him? Is he an actual natural 8 in like that sort of system that Ange was playing?
There was just no space for him either.
That's the thing.
That field, just because of the high press alone.
Yeah.
You're playing football in such a compact area.
Yeah.
Someone with the legs that he's got, you need a bit of space either to chase someone or to get in behind.
But we even saw I think it was in Andy's first season when we beat Villa 4-0, and he does this cross.
Yes.
It was like a winger. He he's got gazelle legs. He just was pelting it down the right hand side, puts his cross in. So he has got ability on the ball. He is a proper box to box sort of midfielder. And I think that's the thing. Everyone was honing in on those midfielders at Spurs, forgot about him, and thought, actually, he's the perfect midfielder for Thomas Frank, because he's got the legs, he's willing to press.
Versatile.
Yeah, he's versatile, and he's just, ideally I don't want to see him as the 10 too often. I don't mind when we're playing a midfield 3 and it's flat, because that makes sense, and he is good at pressing. But there are moments where I could imagine in front of goal, maybe his finishing is not going to be as good as Maddison or Kulusevski, whoever goes there normally. But to me, I just think it's just... Even, he wasn't meant to start the Europa League final and he got the assist. So it's just, he's taking this opportunity, running with it. He just seems like a really humble guy as well. And I just wanted to say as well, you're talking about leadership and leadership from random areas. Pedro Porro took the team talk at the weekend before the game. So there are these moments where there's players who, been there for a few years now, and they're stepping up under a new manager, where everyone thought there was going to be a max exodus with Ange Postecoglou. I think they're all, hopefully this early on, pulling in the same direction.
Jay, how much of that do you think is down to winning that Europa League? Because like people like Porro, they're just filled with confidence now and the togetherness. There's nothing that's going to bring you closer together than winning something and sharing that experience. Do you think Thomas Frank walked into a very united dressing room, even though it was such a bad season last year?
Probably, because firstly, to win something in adversity would have brought everybody together. And, you know, Brennan Johnson said it before the Europa League final. We said it after the Europa League final. I think Van der Ven said similar. When I joined Spurs, all these people bantering me and taking the mick about how I'm never going to win a trophy, etc. And they completely eradicated that. They proved all those people wrong. So, of course, that would have united them. And I think one clever thing Frank has done is he's not tried to forget Postecoglou and what he's done.
Oh, no, he always mentions it, which is great.
I think that's so key because he's not trying to say, oh, you achieved that under the previous manager, that doesn't matter anymore. He's spoken many times that Postecoglou is a legend in his own right. But that means he would have drilled that into the players as well and said, well done. Now let's think about what we're going to do next. If you really want to be considered legends and go down in the history of this club, you've got an opportunity to do something that not many others have. Yeah. Keep winning. Don't just make it a one-off piece of silverware. Make sure that you add to that. I'm here to take you guys to the next level.
I feel like I've got Thomas Frank with me. I'm looking at Joe like, come on.
The spokesman.
I've sat in too many press conferences with him, clearly.
You sold it to me.
But why as a player would you not be G'd up by that? By someone saying,
absolutely.
okay, this is what you achieved last year. I think there's some tiny corrections we can make and we can kick on. I'm sure the players would be loving to hear that.
Yeah, nice. Listen, we can't get carried away, and that's what we as Spurs fans have often been criticised for. But it's a good start, and, you know, two complete different ends of the spectrum in Burnley and Manchester City. You know, we couldn't judge it after Burnley. Then it's, oh, wow, City. Now people having question marks over City. Next few games, winnable games. Bournemouth at home. It's not going to be an easy game, but that's a winnable game. You're going to West Ham, who are in turmoil at the moment, away from home. You know, you got Wolves and Leeds, etc. in the way. We could be seeing a repeat of Postecoglou's first season, where after 10 games, there's a lot of anticipation and expectation, but I just say tread carefully for now, which brings me nicely into our next section, which is about the last week of the transfer market, as we say, because this is what's going to make or break that for me. And this is where Daniel Levy really needs to take the responsibility and have a look and not go on the overlap and say, well, we want to win a Premier League and a Champions League and put that kind of pressure out there without backing it up. Now, I'm hoping that the whole, and we'll talk about the Eze saga next, we have to do it, that there would have said to him, especially because he's a man that wants to keep face, he's a very proud man, go, right, I'm going to do something even bigger than that. And goes and does a loan mill for Rodrigo or gets a Sevilla or whatever. He has to do something big for me now in this last week. How likely are we to see that, Jay?
I mean, the pool says it all.
It's difficult to tell. Like I said, it's a really tricky situation because you want to give Thomas Frank the best squad possible, and at this moment in time, I don't think it's completely there. Like we said earlier, Kudus and Palhinha have been excellent additions. Telling Danso have arrived permanently after they're on loan, but then you're looking at Kota Takai, who we've not seen any mention of, and I think
I forgot he played for us.
There was a big gap between Spurs and the other teams in the Premier League last season.
100%.
And you look at the money that those teams have only gone on and spent since. Has the gap gotten smaller or gotten bigger? I think you could argue.
Well, you thought the Man City one got bigger, and all of a sudden we scored them.
Turkey here.
So you just need to make sure that that squad is strengthened enough, and I think something has to happen at the end of the window.
And the irony is, of course, as they go into Arsenal, that strengthened them even further. Sonny, you know, in terms of what is expected, as Spurs fans, we saw an absolute meltdown on social media and across all of our podcasts last week in regards to Daniel Levy. I think this manager, for me personally, is the one I feel most comfortable in giving a big and good squad to. I think we look at Postecoglou, even a Conte, even Mourinho. I knew Mourinho and Conte wouldn't be there for long, in whatever circumstances. They're not there for long times. Postecoglou was always a risk. Thomas Frank in the Premier League, if you're going to go and give him the tools and the money and invest, because you're thinking, oh, hang about, this player we're going to spend 70 million on, he might be here for the next 5 years. Well, I think Thomas Frank will be here for quite a period of time.
I just feel like to me, obviously, I know we finished 17th last year and we won the Europa League, but to me, I feel like that squad was so, like, it shouldn't have been down there. It was too good to be that low in the Premier League. And the reason it was the coach. So the fact that we brought in a new coach with new ideas, and we've all said about that, we knew we were going to, like, build up to, like, I predicted, my prediction, and I've really, like, cast my net here, between 6th and 8th, but depending on what we do, with Eze, if we'd got that over the line and that would have been a statement signing, or a Morgan's White, you're thinking maybe fifth, or like what could, because you got to think the teams we're competing with are Villa, Newcastle, maybe Manchester United, and then the teams like Brentford, Bournemouth, and Brighton. They're looking like falling off a little bit. Not done too much business. Got new managers here and there. So this is an opportunity for Spurs to really close the gap.
Agreed.
I think so far the window's been. I'm going to go with okay. Because we've gone out there, we've signed some players that we needed, some different players that offer something that we don't have, and that's what I think a good transfer window is. But the problem is, it's been a month since we've signed someone. Spurs are historic for leaving it last minute, deadline day specialists, Levy, panicking final moments.
Get your yellow ties on.
Exactly, but that's what really annoyed me most. Not the fact that he went to Arsenal, not the fact that he turned us down, but if we just maybe offered maybe a few more terms here and there, different payment, it's always just a bit. We're just going to be bridesmaids forever in the transfer market because we're just not offering what people. We're trying to shop in Harrods with our like Lidl card or something like that. It's just not really. It's getting the coupons out and seeing if we can get the extra. To me, as I said earlier in the previous section, the market's now shrunk. All the targets that we were looking at are now either like
and they know
not
we're
available.
Desperate.
Exactly. And we look like mugs now, don't we?
Bad business.
I think the problem with the Eze situation is not about shopping at Harrods on a little card, but more trying to. In theory, what Spurs did made sense. There was an opportunity to negotiate a lower fee with Crystal Palace, let the release clause expire. You think that you're the only interested party. You get the deal done at a lower price. It's an intelligent piece of business. But the football world is volatile. The industry is volatile. Players get injured. Circumstances change. And so the longer that Spurs waited to make that deal, the more chance that something would go wrong. That's my criticism, that you could have executed it at £68 million or £70 million or whatever it was. But you could have got it done at the beginning of August, at the end of July, and you're mitigating the risk involved. I think looking at the differences between Postecoglou and Frank with the squad composition, etc., maybe the one thing which helped Spurs is that to be a Postecoglou player, it was a very specific system and you needed a very specific type of player to basically run up and down all
he needed a squad of like
game.
40 players, didn't
Whereas at least with Frank, we've already seen on 3 different occasions, different systems, different profiles of players and tweaks within it. So maybe the pool of players that Spurs can buy under Frank is slightly bigger than what they could have bought under Postecoglou. So maybe heading into the window, there's more opportunities present themselves than if they were still under Postecoglou looking at a player they need for a Postecoglou system.
And the thing is as well, of course, after the Eze situation, he responded, not mentioning Eze or anyone in particular, I want players here that want to play for this badge and understand and respect this club. So, there's that to take into consideration as well. So whenever he's speaking to someone, like you said, Palhinha said, I spoke to the coach and I wanted to come here. So he's selling, the project to these players. Now, there are a few players out there that I look at and think their clubs, they're not getting enough game time and they would suit. I already mentioned off air, someone like Harvey Elliott, for example, for me, who's a great young, English talent who's been at a Premier League winning side. He's got Premier League experience. Okay, it might not be the biggest numbers, but I think he's someone who comes in and improves the squad, not necessarily maybe the starting level. I think he could definitely.
He's a winner. You could say that if you wanted to.
Still a very young player.
Still very young, and a lot.
Versatile.
And it would mean him coming back to London as well for him being from a London background. There are players out there, but I think what's going to really take some of the heat off of Daniel Levy after this Eze situation, and people are unhappy. It's going to have to be a name, a marquee signing, and he's kind of allowed that to happen.
But who is that? That's the thing. Like, we're not going to. If the money's still there, like the 60 million must be floating around because they're the two sort of offers we put in for Eze and Rodgers. So you got to think who is a 60 million pound player who's available. It's hard to. Like I've said some names earlier, but even they're 60s, 80s, 100. I mean, if he did do that, then he'd get all the monkeys off his back, wouldn't he? Like if he went and slapped down 80 million on Morgan Rodgers and Villa, they could they've got so many PSR.
It would help their PSR for sure.
To me, there's a few opportunities still lingering, like testing West Ham's resolve for Lucas Paqueta or something like that.
Oh, don't say that. The West Ham fans would hate us.
But it's like we're leaving it so late in the day, and it's just it questions, and maybe Jay knows some answers to this, like the sort of the way we've gone into this window? You know, obviously people talk about Johan Langer and Vinay Venkateshan's now in the building. Paratici, what's his situation? Now, he was at Stamford Bridge watching Eze last week. So what has been the transfer sort of outlook from Spurs this year?
I think the biggest issue that Spurs faced in this transfer window, there were two. Whether Postecoglou was still going to be in charge and whether they were going to be in European competition or not. And both of those things were only determined in late May and early June. So lots of other clubs, and we'll use Brentford as an example. Brentford plan their transfer windows 18 months in advance, which to me is insane.
Wow.
But that's how far ahead they're looking at the development of particular players, looking at contracts running down, etc. And obviously they're a very good example of a club that's run very efficiently in the transfer market. Whereas if Spurs are in the final week of May, looking at their list of targets, thinking, this is the list if we're in the Champions League, this is the list if we're not in the Champions League. They've lost so much ground on, just background work that they can do with those targets already.
How much money are we getting for Christmas this year, boys?
and also just delaying Postecoglou, the decision around that. I think it was 2 weeks after the Europa League final, and then it was another week until Frank was hired. That's an extra 3 weeks. And I think during that time was the first pre-Club World Cup transfer window where Chelsea signed Delap and João Pedro. It's just, again, that's another 3 key weeks there to get business done. So I think since all of that's happened, Spurs have made some mistakes. Just mentioned it with not really moving quickly enough with Eze. But I also think the hands were slightly tied behind their back because of circumstances. But did they deal with the Postecoglou situation perfectly?
It makes a bit of sense with... there was some quotes from Thomas Frank the other week saying that at the moment, his relationship transfer-wise is not what it was like at Brentford. Well, if it's like what you're saying there, where it is so smooth and they're identifying targets,
polar opposite,
and like they know what they got their scouts in the wherever they want to look. Then I think the thing is, you can see what Levy is trying to do. He's got Paratici in sort of the southern Europe, looking at like maybe some experience, and in Northern Europe maybe Johan Lang's looking at some like gems here and there.
Talent,
So I feel like it's trying to get there, but it's going to take years for this to set the wheels in motion. And at the moment, I think as Spurs fans, we're impatient. I'm going to admit it. We're impatient, and we just would like a statement signing because
we haven't had one. Do you know who our last statement signing was? Who would you say it was, Jay?
Yeah, would it not be Solanke? Club record signing last year, England international. You're not having that, are you?
Gareth Bale on loan as like a dreamy one.
Well, when he came back.
But I'd say a statement might have been Ndombele because it was like, look at this guy, high profile.
Mate, 94, Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yeah, true. Well, like a big name, yeah.
Big name on the world stage.
Okay, I get it. I get
like, when you ask Spurs fans that, they'll say Modric, but they were pumped.
Yeah.
That went really well.
Van der Vaart.
Van der Vaart was at the tail end of the Real Madrid career. It didn't really go that well, but we obviously loved him. But again, that's what frustrates the Spurs fans because they're paying all of this money, to go to the big stadium and they've got everything there. But, where's that, the big, even for Arsenal, seeing Eze walk out with the jeans and the top on and that, and Ian Wright's doing, do you want to create? Do you want to re-sign an academy product for over 60 million? But, we all want that as fans. We want that big moment to get excited and the kids getting their scarves and all that out. And again, I think... a lot of Spurs fans at the moment are hurting, and it is because of being always the bridesmaid, as you said.
I think it's because Son leaving as well. Seeing Son leave,
but that's
a big name, a big personality, a talisman, a legend, and seeing like he's already hit the ground running in the MLS. I think he's now the most sold shirt in MLS history, or in the world at the moment, next to Messi and whatever. So like that, him going as well is leaving a chasm because it's like, who is our star? Because we're saying Romero, we're saying all these players are. But there's not like a, you put on your wall when you're younger, like a poster.
That's why I said
Eze could have been that.
Eze definitely could have been that.
But maybe Kudus or someone like that will be that by the end of the year. Or
100%. But I definitely feel the Spurs fans, the way that we are, feel we want something big. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We could talk all day about Spurs, but... we've got to see if they can be consistent and keep it going. Let's not get too carried away. That's all from us at Inside Spurs. Thank you to Sonny and to Jay. Don't forget, leave a comment, subscribe as well. This has been the Inside Spurs on talkSPORT with talkSPORT Bet.